A 13-year-old girl disappeared after her parents were shot dead in their Wisconsin home. 88 days later, a dog walker gets the shock of her life when she encounters a barefoot teenager running down a remote country road begging for help. What happened to Jayme Closs between October 13, 2018 and January 10, 2019 represents both the darkest depths of human evil and the incredible strength of the human spirit. This is not just a story about kidnapping and murder. This is a story about how a young girl survived the unthinkable and found the courage to save herself when no one else could. The story begins in Barron, Wisconsin, a small town of 11,000 people located in the northwestern part of the state. Barron is the kind of place where everyone knows everyone, where people leave their doors unlocked, and where violent crime is virtually unheard of. It is a community built on trust, hard work, and family values. James and Denise Closs had lived in Barron their entire lives. James worked at the Jennie-O Turkey Store, a local turkey processing plant that employed hundreds of people in the area. Denise worked at the same facility in a different department. They were hard-working, decent people who had built a quiet, stable life together. Their daughter Jayme was 13 years old and in 8th grade at Barron Middle School. She was a typical teenager who loved dancing, playing volleyball, and spending time with her friends. Jayme was known for her bright smile, her positive attitude, and her close relationship with her parents. The Closs family was tight-knit and loving, the kind of family that neighbors described as perfect. On the evening of October 13, 2018, the Closs family was settling in for a quiet Sunday night at home. James had worked his shift at the turkey plant. Denise had spent the day doing household chores, and Jayme was finishing up her homework for school the next day. It was an ordinary evening in an ordinary American household. At approximately 12:53 in the morning on October 15th, the Barron County Sheriff's Office received a 911 call from the Closs residence. The call was brief and terrifying. The dispatcher could hear screaming and commotion in the background, but no one spoke directly into the phone. The line went dead after approximately 45 seconds. Deputies were dispatched immediately to the Closs home on Highway 8. When they arrived 4 minutes later, they found a scene of unimaginable horror. The front door had been blown off its hinges by a shotgun blast. Inside, they discovered the bodies of James and Denise Closs, both shot and killed. 13-year-old Jayme was nowhere to be found. The investigation began immediately. Crime scene investigators processed every inch of the Closs home, looking for clues about what had happened and who might have taken Jayme. The FBI was called in to assist with the case, and an Amber Alert was issued for the missing teenager. The evidence painted a picture of a violent home invasion. The killer had used a shotgun to blow open the front door, then systematically executed both parents before kidnapping their daughter. There were no signs of a struggle, suggesting that the attack had been swift and overwhelming. But investigators were puzzled by several aspects of the crime. There was no evidence of robbery. Nothing valuable had been taken from the house. There were no signs of sexual assault. The killer had not attempted to hide the bodies or cover up the crime. It appeared that the sole purpose of the attack had been to kidnap Jayme Closs. The question that haunted investigators was simple. Why Jayme? What made this 13-year-old girl from a small Wisconsin town the target of such a brutal and calculated attack? The investigation expanded rapidly. FBI agents interviewed hundreds of people, including Jayme's friends, classmates, teachers, and family members. They examined the family's financial records, social media accounts, and employment history. They looked for any possible connection between the Closs family and potential suspects. Days turned into weeks with no significant leads. The FBI offered a $50,000 reward for information leading to Jayme's safe return. Volunteers organized search parties to comb through the forests and rural areas surrounding Barron. The story gained national attention, with Jayme's picture appearing on news broadcasts and social media feeds across the country. But as time passed, hope began to fade. Statistics show that the chances of finding a kidnapped child alive decreased dramatically after the first 48 hours. After 2 weeks, the likelihood of a positive outcome becomes very small. After a month, most cases become recovery missions rather than rescue operations. The Closs family refused to give up hope. Jayme's aunts and uncles appeared on television, pleading for her safe return. They maintained that Jayme was a fighter, that she would survive whatever ordeal she was facing. But privately, even they began to fear the worst. What none of them knew was that Jayme was being held captive just 70 miles away, in a remote cabin in the woods of Douglas County, Wisconsin. Her captor was a 21-year-old man named Jake Thomas Patterson, and he had been planning this crime for months. Jake Patterson was a deeply disturbed individual who had been struggling with mental health issues and social isolation for years. He had dropped out of high school, been discharged from the military after just 5 weeks, and had difficulty maintaining employment or relationships. He lived alone in a cabin that belonged to his grandparents, spending most of his time online playing video games and consuming violent media. Patterson had first seen Jayme Closs in September 2018, when he was driving past her school bus stop. He became immediately obsessed with the 13-year-old girl. Though he had never spoken to her or had any connection to her family, he decided that he was going to kidnap her, and he began planning the crime in meticulous detail. For weeks, Patterson conducted surveillance on the Closs family. He learned their routines, their schedules, and the layout of their home. He discovered that James worked at the turkey plant and that Denise worked there as well. He learned that Jayme attended Barron Middle School and rode the school bus every day. Patterson's plan was simple and brutal. He would wait until the family was home together, then break in and kill the parents before kidnapping Jayme. He purchased a shotgun specifically for this purpose, and he practiced his attack multiple times. On the night of October 13th, Patterson put his plan into action. He drove to the Closs home, parked his car, and approached the front door with his shotgun. When James Closs came to the door to investigate a strange noise, Patterson blew the door off its hinges and shot him dead. Denise Closs had called 911 when she heard the commotion, but Patterson found her and Jayme hiding in the bathroom. He ordered Denise to hang up the phone and put tape over Jayme's mouth. When Denise tried to protect her daughter, Patterson shot and killed her as well. Patterson then forced Jayme out of the house and into the trunk of his car. He drove her to his remote cabin in Douglas County, where he had prepared a prison for her. The cabin was isolated, surrounded by dense forest, and miles from the nearest neighbor. For the next 88 days, Jayme Closs was held captive in conditions that were both physically and psychologically brutal. Patterson kept her hidden under his bed for hours at a time, sometimes for up to 12 hours without food, water, or access to a bathroom. He placed weights and boxes around the bed to prevent her from escaping, and he threatened to kill her if she made any noise. Patterson's treatment of Jayme was calculated to break her spirit and make her completely dependent on him. He isolated her from all human contact except for himself. He controlled every aspect of her existence, from when she could eat to when she could use the bathroom. He subjected her to psychological torture, constantly reminding her that he had killed her parents and that he would kill her too if she did not obey. The psychological impact on Jayme was devastating. She was just 13 years old, and she was dealing with the trauma of witnessing her parents' murder while simultaneously trying to survive her own captivity. She lived in constant fear, never knowing when Patterson might decide to hurt her or kill her. But Jayme Closs was stronger than her captor realized. Despite the trauma and terror, she never stopped looking for an opportunity to escape. She observed Patterson's routines and behaviors, looking for weaknesses she could exploit. She maintained hope that she would eventually find a way to freedom. Patterson's control over Jayme was not as complete as he believed. While he had isolated her physically, he had not completely broken her spirit. Jayme continued to think about her family, her friends, and her life before the kidnapping. She held on to memories of better times and refused to let Patterson completely destroy her sense of self. The opportunity for escape came on January 10, 2019. Patterson had left the cabin to visit his mother, something he did occasionally. Before leaving, he had secured Jayme under the bed as usual, but on this particular day he had not been as careful with the restraints. Jayme realized that she could move more freely than usual. She managed to push away some of the weights and boxes that were holding her down, and she was able to crawl out from under the bed. For the first time in 88 days, she was alone in the cabin and unrestrained. The decision to escape was both terrifying and exhilarating. Jayme knew that if Patterson returned and found her gone, he would likely track her down and kill her, but she also knew that this might be her only chance to get away. She had to make a choice between the known horror of captivity and the unknown dangers of escape. Jayme chose freedom. She put on a pair of Patterson's shoes, which were far too big for her feet, and she walked out of the cabin into the cold Wisconsin winter. She had no coat, no warm clothes, and no idea where she was or how to get home. All she knew was that she had to get as far away from the cabin as possible. The area around Patterson's cabin was heavily forested and sparsely populated. Jayme walked through the woods in freezing temperatures, her feet bleeding from the ill-fitting shoes, her body shaking from cold and fear. She could have easily become lost in the forest, or died from exposure, but she kept walking. After walking for nearly a mile, Jayme emerged from the forest onto a rural road. She was exhausted, terrified, and barely able to stand, but she was free. She continued walking down the road, hoping to find someone who could help her. That someone turned out to be Jeanne Neuter, a 66-year-old woman who was walking her dog along the same road. Neuter was shocked to see a young girl walking alone in the cold, wearing oversized shoes and looking terrified. "I am Jayme Closs," the girl said. "I have been kidnapped." Neuter immediately recognized the name. Like everyone in the area, she had been following the story of Jayme's disappearance. She had seen the missing person posters, the news reports, and the desperate pleas from Jayme's family. She could hardly believe that this was the same girl who had been missing for nearly 3 months. Neuter took Jayme to a nearby house belonging to Peter and Kristin Kacinskas. The couple immediately called 911 and tried to comfort the traumatized teenager while they waited for help to arrive. "This is 911. What is your emergency?" the dispatcher asked. "I have a missing person," Kristin Kacinskas replied. "I have Jayme Closs." The dispatcher was initially skeptical. There had been false reports and hoaxes related to the case, and the idea that Jayme had simply appeared on a rural road seemed unlikely. But as Kacinskas provided more details, it became clear that this was real. Within minutes, law enforcement officers arrived at the Kacinskas home. They found Jayme sitting in the living room, wrapped in a blanket, shivering but alive. She was thin, pale, and clearly traumatized, but she was breathing and conscious and able to communicate. Jayme provided investigators with a description of her captor and the location of the cabin where she had been held. She told them that the man who had kidnapped her was named Jake Patterson and that he had killed her parents. She gave them directions to the cabin and warned them that Patterson was dangerous and armed. Law enforcement immediately began searching for Patterson. They found his car parked at his mother's house, and they arrested him without incident. Patterson confessed to the crimes almost immediately, providing details that matched Jayme's account of what had happened. The arrest of Jake Patterson brought closure to one of the most high-profile missing person cases in recent memory. The FBI called off the massive search operation that had been ongoing for nearly 3 months. The $50,000 reward was cancelled. The case was solved. But for Jayme Closs, the nightmare was just beginning to end. She had survived 88 days of captivity, but she still had to deal with the trauma of losing her parents and the psychological impact of her ordeal. She was taken to a hospital for medical evaluation, then released to the care of her extended family. The outpouring of support for Jayme was overwhelming. People from around the world sent cards, letters, and donations. A GoFundMe account raised hundreds of thousands of dollars to help with her recovery and education. The community of Barron rallied around her, offering love, support, and protection. Jake Patterson was charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder and 1 count of kidnapping. He pled guilty to all charges and was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. At his sentencing hearing, Jayme provided a victim impact statement in which she demonstrated incredible maturity and strength. "Jake Patterson will never have power over me," she said. "I was brave, I survived, I did not let him win." The case of Jayme Closs became a symbol of hope and resilience. Her story showed that even in the darkest circumstances, the human spirit can endure and triumph. She survived not through luck or chance, but through her own courage and determination. Today, Jayme Closs is working to rebuild her life. She is receiving counseling and therapy to help her process the trauma she experienced. She is continuing her education and spending time with her extended family. She is slowly learning to trust the world again and to believe in the possibility of happiness. The cabin where Jayme was held captive has been torn down. The site serves as a reminder of the evil that humans are capable of, but also of the incredible strength that victims can display in the face of that evil. Jayme's story also highlighted the importance of never giving up hope in missing person cases. For 88 days, law enforcement, volunteers, and family members continued searching for her, even when the odds seemed impossible. Their persistence and dedication helped ensure that when Jayme escaped, she had people ready to help her. The case also demonstrated the power of community support in helping victims recover from trauma. The outpouring of love and assistance that Jayme received from people around the world showed that even in our darkest moments we are not alone. Most importantly, Jayme Closs's story proves that survival is possible, even in the most horrific circumstances. She endured 88 days of captivity, witnessed the murder of her parents, and survived psychological torture that would have broken many adults. But she never gave up hope, and when the opportunity presented itself, she had the courage to save herself. The 13-year-old girl who disappeared from a quiet Wisconsin town became a symbol of hope for victims of crime everywhere. Her story reminds us that no matter how dark the situation appears, no matter how hopeless things seem, there is always a possibility for freedom and recovery. Jake Patterson believed he could own another human being, that he could break a young girl's spirit and make her his property. He was wrong. Jayme Closs proved that the human spirit cannot be owned, cannot be broken, and cannot be defeated. On that cold January morning, when Jayme walked out of Patterson's cabin and into the Wisconsin woods, she was not just escaping from her captor, she was reclaiming her life, her future, and her freedom. She was proving that no matter what evil people do to us, they cannot destroy who we are inside. If you found this case as shocking as we did, make sure to subscribe to Criminal Mind Cortex for more incredible true crime stories that will leave you questioning everything you thought you knew. Hit that notification bell so you never miss our latest investigations into the most mind-bending cases from around the world.